My name's Nasty. I've come to see the great Anne Pigal, and I hope her performance is going to be good today. Otherwise, I'm going to get a refund. Anyway, I'm here for the festival, the great Portabello Film Festival. I'm sure there's going to be some future stars. There's one right behind you, Anne Pigal.
And Baroness von
Baroness von Puta is here, that's me.
is in the film.
And hopefully I'm going to have a good time.
Well, tonight is the night. We're in Portabello, Notting Hill, nice palm trees in the background, and we're at the West Bank Gallery where I'm developing my project Extase, which is a new album, but basically it's a kind of a multimedia work in progress project. So we're gonna have some videos, a little film I did about Soho called the Soho Connection. So we want to point that, you know, the developers, the property developers and the councils are killing the culture as we know it. You know, they're closing the clubs. They want to kill music and art, and so I'm fighting to save that, you know, and to save a little bit of Soho if we can. So, and then I will be performing some songs from the album Extase. So there will be quite a lot going on, really. So quite a few friends are coming, so it's very exciting.
Music business. I think so, that's what it said.
Okay. You're right.
Well, it's hard to get on here, but this is my local.
Well, it's easy for me. It's just like down the road, isn't it?
Oh, you live around?
I live in Maidavale, yeah.
So you work in the field?
Music.
I work in music.
Oh, what you doing?
I've been a manager of a club for years.
How well do you know it?
We met because my main friend, and he was 50 a couple of years ago.
It's my great pleasure now to introduce you to Anne Pigal.
You think we've known each other for years, but we have really, probably back in the days. Anyway, so I'm going to show some little videos and then a little short about Soho, and then we're going to play a few songs. I mean, basically, the whole project is called Extase. It's the name of my new album. There's a few here for sale if you want some. And basically, it's a very loose project, which will involve art, films, lectures, all kinds of stuff. As I used to live in Soho, and I used to run some nights in Soho, quite popular ones. I'm this is a subject very close to my heart. And I've discovered a lot of its history recently, which is obviously really fascinating, including the immigrants. But that's another subject, and we have somebody who knows about all this, which that we'll talk about it in the Soho Connection. So I'm not going to go on about this. But let's face it, the culture as we know it, as in rock and roll and everything exciting in between, to do with the art and the music, this is being totally erased from Soho, London, and the world. This has been executed by the greedy property developers in connection with the councils, and they're all putting it in their pockets. And this is not absolutely acceptable. And we must all fight against this. I mean, we're only a few people here, but as Glenn Matlock reminded me the other day, when punk started, there were only 8 people. So if 8 people could change the world, I think we can change it again. So we're going to start with some little videos, okay? You might think they're a bit self-indulgent, but I can do that. Well, if that can just, you know, throw little seeds and make it grow, you know, for our care for people who care. You know.
Al Bowley got killed by a bomb in Soho. Do you know Al Bowley?
Right.
Yeah, he came from a gig up north or wherever he'd gone, Suffolk or somewhere, and he lived in do you know Al Bowley?
Would you like to?
No. Yeah, but he did. He got by he got blown up. Anyway, he got.
What, when?
During World War II.
Right. No, but he was talking about that there was only very small bombs in Soho during the
yeah,
war.
yeah,
only one big one, but nothing as big as what is happening now. It's a new kind of war.
Oh yeah, and also because I'm in this moving now. World War II, we had a certain fella was telling, because he was telling wrong coordinates.
Okay.
I'm being dead serious.
Yeah, I know.
Because they didn't want the West End being bombed because of the royal family being there, and
Well, you know, we can
and
go
the South
on and
London,
on.
South London got South London got decimated, big time with the B2s and that.
Live set.
Huh? Oh. Anyway, but apart from that,
I'd love to introduce the lovely Jenny Reneke, who was in the Black Dahlia video earlier on. A regular of this festival and really wonderful actress. And so the next one is about Soho, totally about Soho. It's called the Soho Connection, and it's part of a really ongoing project. I had to edit loads and loads of interviews into this 16-minute thing. But nevertheless, even if it alludes to things, I think it actually really makes the point. Wait until the end of it. I've got some really amazing, Soho people in there. So.
Isn't that wonderful? In the beginning, there were the coffee houses.
Yep.
There were the coffee houses. And that they started back in, sorry, I've got to look at these dates and I can't see it, back in the 1700s, and the coffee was first brought to Soho. Before that, Soho had just been a little village. And before that, it had been land owned by Henry VIII, and he bequeathed it to people to hunt on. And that's supposed to be how the story of Soho comes. They were going, Soho, Soho, so they were chasing the animals. Anyway, so then the little village started. Then this Italian, he wasn't Italian, he was Greek, but he went to Turkey and he loved Turkish coffee. And he brought it back into Soho. This was early 1700s. And he started selling it, not in a shop, but on a stall. And this was totally new to the English and the people that lived in Soho, so they all came flocking to drink this it was strong Turkish coffee, and they just thought it was actually fantastic. They thought they got higher on that than anything. Then a coffee shop started. The first one that really started was in 1712, and it was on the site where Starbucks is now, in Russell Street, near Covent Garden. So it's still a coffee shop, which is really weird. And this was a really famous coffee shop. It was called Buttons. And everybody used to go there, playwrights, poets, intellectuals, ordinary people used to go there just to talk and discuss. It's how they got their news. They used to go in there with news and tell people what was happening. And it was called Buttons, and it stayed there for years. It's now not even got a blue plaque. Anyway, so after that, several little coffee shops started up everywhere, and it became the thing to do. You went to Soho, you went to the coffee shops, all the intellectuals met with the ordinary people. They used to have big sort of post boxes that people could come along and put in queries into these post boxes, and they'd all be debated in these they sit at these great long tables, long wooden tables, and get drunk and debate all these problems, and they would actually go back and tell people what conclusion they'd come to. Samuel Pepys is always down there. Most of his incredible stories and fantastic tales that he does, he heard. He heard from sailors that came to Soho. He heard from all the visitors that came there. Immigrants started pouring into Soho. There were the French. There were French Huguenots, Greeks, Italians, Jews, many other nationalities. And they all came into Soho, and Soho welcomed them all. Soho had a big heart. Everybody was welcome there. Everybody lived there, even with their religious differences. It was fine. So then finally this went on, and it all got sort of much more businesslike, and some of the biggest, some of the areas had theatres, proper theatres from the capital, from London, but they became very, very expensive, and ordinary people couldn't go to them. So the Fringe Theatre started. So the Fringe was one of the first places to start, was in the UK. It started first the Edinburgh Festival by somebody called Jim Haynes, and then he brought it down to Soho, started the Arts Lab. And then after that, all these little theatres sprang out. There was the Open Space run by Charles Marowitz. There's Ed Bowman's Almost Free, where it was called Almost Free because you just had to pay a donation when you went in. There was a thing called the Basement Theatre, which became the Soho Poly, and now the Soho Theatre itself. And it was fringe theatre actually means in itself theatre that is not conforming to the normal standards, and that is non-judgmental and tries to put issues before people so you can you can make up your own mind, because the censorship in the theatre has just more or less come off this. This is the sort of late 60s, 70s, and all the Americans came here to do that. Getting back to the history of Soho, there were some incredible people who lived here. Mozart lived in Frith Street with his sister and his father. And then Constable lived there for 10 years, the beginning of the 1800s. William Blake was born in Soho, born and grew up in Soho. I didn't know that, but I thought that was brilliant. And Karl Marx lived at 54 Dean Street when he was writing Das Kapital. So as you can see, it's always been this huge creative place with people that came with ideas that weren't accepted by the establishment, or wanted to discuss them, or wanted to develop them, and you could do everything in Soho. Anyway, in the 1800s, it became the entertainment district for the whole of London. And I've said all that. Okay. So go to the next page. There was actually there the Wimble Theatre, the famous old Wimble Theatre that played all through the war, all through the Second World War. It never closed, and the seats were always full up. Even with the bombs going, people still performed at the Wimble. But of course, now I haven't even touched on the music scene. Now the music scene was always huge there. I mean, the Italians came, they used to play the guitars, they were playing music in the coffee shop, so it started from that. And then it started to develop. I mean, in fact, Soho is world famous for its hand in the development of modern music and jazz and even rock and roll. I mean, there were things like, there was the Marquee, there was a Zanzibar, that was a coffee place, Two Eyes Coffee Shop where rock and roll used to go.
Wee Willie Harris.
Wee Willie Harris, yeah, Tommy Steele, they were all down there.
Oh.
And then clubs like Ken Collins Jazz Club and Ronnie Scott's, and the Flamingo, which was in Water Street, which played an important role in the development of British rhythm and blues. So it was really, really important, the clubs down there. In fact, Soho is world famous for the development of modern music. And of course, Denmark Street was where you could buy the best guitars in the world. And that's now virtually closed down altogether. I mean, not the whole of Soho is closed down, but most of it. It's changed anyway. And now early in about the 60s, the late 50s, 60s, of course, the ladies of the night all arrived, which always arrives in these places where there's great sort of immigrant populations, where there's a lot of movement, where there's bustle, where there's intellectuals, where there's artists, everything goes hand in hand as well. They're like the Montmartre in Paris. But in the beginning of the 1960s, it was estimated there was over 100 strip clubs there in Soho, and they also complained about all the post-it notes and all the little photographs and all the invitations that were pinned up in all the photo booths and all the cigarette shops of all the ladies of the night. So it was by then a huge hodgepodge of really interesting things. I mean, creativity, music, sex. I mean, it was all there. It was absolutely fantastic. And I don't want you to forget Chinatown, because that actually developed after the war. It was a few Chinese settled down on Gerrard Street, but evidently after the war, for some reason or other, they all came down and lived in Chinatown. So, and then the street markets. Now, Berwick Street Market is totally gone. I mean, you could go to Berwick Street Market and buy any kind of material you liked. Any material you wanted that you couldn't match, it was unusual, you could go and get a Berwick Street Market. That's gone. So that's coming to the end of the history. So unfortunately, it's changing again. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't have change, and we can't stop change, and change is essential. But it's so sad when something with such immense history and such a tradition of art and culture.
Hitler did less damage to Soho.
Yeah, Hitler did less damage to Soho. Hitler didn't touch Soho. Did he? I mean, I didn't bomb Soho. But anyway, so
there's a little bit of that in the shot coming up. Yeah.
Is there?
About bombs.
Bombs on Soho. Was it bombs on Soho?
You
Yeah.
But it's a long story.
Oh, it's a long story. Okay. I didn't get that bit. But yes, so now it's been changed into this bland global business centre. I mean, everything's going. It's going to be when that great crossroad opens up where the old cinema is, and the Curzon.
Astoria.
And the Curzon on Shaftesbury Avenue. It's going to be an outlet. So all that will be a huge station. A huge station. I mean, can you imagine people that are going to be pouring through there from Europe, backwards and forwards and travelling? It's going to be nothing for any atmosphere at all. So we're very sorry about it, and I think this is a little prayer for it. So thank you very much.